Hello, Assalamu alaikum. How are you? I hope you are doing well. My name is Dr. Ahmed, clinical psychologist, psychotherapist, speech and language therapist, and I am founder of CRPR, that is Center for Research Prevention and Rehabilitation for Children and Adults, and I'm also founder of Global Alliance for Persons with Disabilities, Difference and Additional Needs, and I'm also a once-a-day committee member for Meeting International, and I'm also regional director for Sort of Autism International, and today I'm going to present a very important topic that is called managing temper tantrums and meltdown. And I have just created a very nice presentation for you, which is very elaborated. And let's start presenting our presentation. Uh, first, I would like to introduce what is actually temper tantrums and meltdowns. First, we will define them, and then we will see that how we are going to work along that. And let's define what is temper tantrums, and we are going to see how we can manage that. So, as I already told you about my introduction, this is my introduction. Okay, first we are going to start defining what is basically temper tantrums. So basically, temper tantrums is a kind of a condition that typically occur when a child denied what she want or have or wants to do. So it's a kind of a state when the child is start crying, screaming, or maybe he start throwing stuff on the floor, or just banging the door. And he could do anything. Sometimes child hitting themselves, and maybe child start hitting other people as well. So in different people and different individual and different children, the temper tantrums and the showing of the aggressions different way. Let's start defining what is basically let's break down the definition of a temper tantrums. Okay, let's talk about tribal toes. Okay. Parents observe many tantrums during the tribal toes when young children are being to assert independence. In fact, this tribal toe stage is typically experienced between 1 or 2 years of the age, because it takes a while to develop the needed motor, language, and problem solving skill. So when the child is almost about 3 years old, then the child start developing the concept of ego. And ego means that me, I. So when the child start developing the concept of I, then he will start inserting his ego. And he would say that when you talk about children of same age, like 3 or 4 years of age, then they will say she's my sister. It means that this is I, and everything belongs to me, and everything around me is important, and what I am and everything is because of me. So it means that it's the time when the child is able to 1 or 4 years for then the child is able to develop needed motor, language, and problem solving skill. Then that's the movement, and that's the time when the child start developing the aggression kind of thing that he start developing. If you take something from the child, and he will start crying, start screaming, and he start throwing stuff on the floor as well. So, like I told you about the tribal toes, at that age, child would do that. The reason of that temper tantrum could be it's a developmental stage, and child is able to tell that what he's going to do and how he's going to develop certain skill. Like, for example, we talk about language skill, we talk about the concept of I, me, and at that movement, psychosocial development is also in the process. And at that time, if you talk about the Freud stage, at that time we start talking about the concept of me, that everything's revolve around me, and I am the one who is important, and everybody should pay attention toward me. So at that moment, maybe the child start acting irrational. So because he's a child, he don't know what is rational, what is irrational. So at that moment, the child throw temper tantrum. Okay, let's talk about toddlers and preschoolers. They are developed prone to tantrum because they lack refined skill in any one area that sort through frustration on their own. This is because, okay, at that age, why the child will throw temper tantrum, because maybe these skills are not developed yet. It could be just because of language skill. Maybe the child is not able to communicate you properly, but child need why child needs something. and maybe the child is hungry, maybe the child is not able to tell your needs. So that could be a reason of showing temper tantrum. Maybe the child is not able to socialize with other children. That could be a reason that why the child is showing temper tantrums. And maybe the child is in pain, and the child is not able to tell you why he's in pain, and that could be the moment when the child is showing temper tantrums. So these are basically need based. When the child's certain needs are not fulfilled, then the child might show temper tantrums. And uh, other reasons could be they have an emerging desire to become independent. Like I told you, when the concept of I emerge, when the concept of ego emerge, then the child starts showing independence. So the child would want to do everything by himself, and that is the same age when the child is trying to copy elders. When the child, if you talk about the girl, they are they're dressing up like their mother, and they want to sit in the chair where the mother is sitting, and maybe they want to wear the shoes of their parent as well. And if we talk about a boy, and the father of the child is riding a bike, maybe the child want to sit on the bike as well. So at that moment the child is trying to become independent, but have limited motor skill and cognitive skill. So if the child want to become independent, but the child lack motor skill, maybe the child is not able to do something. Maybe the child is not able to reach to that certain point. Maybe the child is not able uh, to think in his mind how I can solve that problem. How can I talk to someone that it's my thing? Just give me back that thing. If you could talk about a small one, and the cognitive skills also means planning, organization, execution. For example, the child want to say that if you want to go to outside the room and you want to turn on the light, but a child could do. A child could drag a chair, and the child could sit on that chair or stand on that chair, and the child can turn on or off that light. But if the child lacks certain skill, which could be motor skill at certain, and he's developed, maybe it is under development, then the child might fail to do that, and he could throw that temper tantrum at that point as well. And if the child is not able to be independent, that could be a possible reason. Next reason could be they have emerging development language skills that make communicate want, need, and frustration. For example, the child don't like certain things, and the child not able to communicate with you. For example, if you talk about autism, then the children, even in that, if you talk about autism, the child lack important, or you could say necessary skill to say something. The child is not able to communicate that the child is in pain. The child is not able to communicate the child wants something. The child is hungry, and the child don't have language, have poor, low, or less language, or no language at all. So it could be a reason why the child could show temper tantrums. And just because the child is not able to say you something, the child is not able to tell you his wants and needs, the child is not able to express his emotions. So that could be a reason of temper tantrum. And if we talk about prefrontal cortex of the brain has not developed yet, if we talk about intellectual disability, so in these children, it might could be a reason that the child is not able to organize, and the child is not able to do certain things. The child is not able to, complete his skills. The child don't know how to eat, or how to say something, or how to open the door, or how to undress himself. It could be a reason that the child might show temper tantrum. And this is a brain center responsible center area which is responsible for emotional regulation and social behavior. So they don't have the ability to regulate. It means that maybe there's a fight, children are playing with each other, and somebody has taken that thing from the child. So if the child is not able to regulate these emotions, the child, maybe, if we have seen a lot of children who come to their mother and say that we want certain thing, child hit us, he have taken something from me. So at that time the child is able to communicate to you. So instead of showing frustration, the child have a place where he can go and he can tell about his problem, and maybe the mother can get to give him something, or maybe the child lost something and the mother find him that thing for him. But if we talk about those children who don't have certain skill, the child if don't have skill to communicate, the child who don't have skill to hold something and eat something, if the child is hungry, let's say the child is hungry, the child is thirsty, so that could be a reason for a child to show of showing temper tantrum. And other reason could be they're developing an understanding of their world, and it's often anxiety producing. The anxiety and lack of control often result in tantrums when it all get too much to manage. Okay, it means that when the child is just trying to sometimes child are doing those things when there new people came into the house, they're going to new place, they're going to the market, they're going in a car, or you're giving him something new to eat, and the child is not able to do, don't know how to do, or how to do it, how to solve, for example, that problem. How the child, if the child might not understand how to wear his own shoes, how to wear new shoes, how to untie his or her hair, how to unbutton the shirt, or how to if the child lack motor skill and maybe he don't know how to eat certain things. So, and maybe the child don't know that the child need more. So these are certain important skill. If you talk about developmental milestones, these are some important skill language skill, motor skill, cognitive skill, social skill. If the child lack those skills, then that is the reason why the child is showing temper tantrums. And if the child have certain level of anxiety, maybe child is in fear, the child feels something that the child cannot handle that thing. And first problem is the child is not able to handle that thing. And the second problem is the child don't know how to take help from someone. So, and the third thing could be the child don't know how to communicate this to some person that please help me out, like seeking somebody help or seeking some kind of you could say assistant. If the child don't know that, then that could be a reason for the children, maybe they are total, or maybe they are in preschool and they start showing temper tantrum. So crying is a response when our child is in need, when a child is hungry. I'm talking about infants. When they're hungry, then they start crying. When they're happy, they start crying. Maybe when they want something, they start crying. If they show discomfort, so they start crying. So it means that that could be a only way that the child is communicating to their some kind of need, some kind of want, some kind of discomfort, some kind of pain. So we need to understand first that why there could be the reason, why, what's the reason, what are the temper tantrums, and what is the reason that why the children are doing that thing. That is the reason we are trying to understand what could be the possible reason in different ages that why a child is showing temper tantrums. So another reason could be the child might lack self-regulation. So let's see what is self-regulation. As children age, they develop self-regulation skill to manage the emotion associated with anxiety and anger. If tantrums, outbursts, persistent past was in developmental appropriate, social emotional difficulties may arise from maladaptive response to anger and anxiety. Okay, it means that, for example, like we usually used to say that these are kind of learned behavior. For example, if a child is crying and you give them something, and maybe the thing is not important for that child, and then maybe the thing is some kind of thing that could harm that child, but even then you give that thing that to the child. Let's say about the mobile phone, and you give that to the child, so that the child start crying, the child don't scream, the child don't stop throw stuff on the floor. The child is eating, the child don't like something and he's eating, and if you're not giving him something like he's like, and he throw that stuff on the floor, so it means that the what a mother is giving a response to a child. The mother might be giving him some food to eat, or his favorite food, or maybe that my child might the mother might give him to mobile so that he can play happily or eat happily. So these are some things that the child learned through his developmental history. For example, if there was a the child was going towards something, and a child which the child you could say the child hit by something and he's on the floor and he start crying, and the elder move toward that child and just ask him to stop crying because he's getting a lot of noise. And you don't get this idea that if a child will learn to fall, then he have to learn that how to get up for himself by himself independently. So if you help that child with to make him stop crying so that he's making a lot of noise, at that moment you just give him a immediate comfort or immediate gratification of something. For example, immediate gratification of the food or the reward that he want. So at that moment, that you give a tool to the children to manipulate you in the later life. So it means that just to avoid maybe a little kind of discomfort in front of you, you are just giving a child to a tool so that he can use that later on, and that these are learned behavior. And maybe child don't even understand that they are doing these things, and they whenever they want to get something, then they will cry. Whenever they want to get something, then they will die on the floor. Whenever they want to eat something which they want, their favorite food, and they will throw the whole food on the floor. So you need to understand that thing, that if you say no, that no means no. So self-regulation means that these are some kind of behavior that the children learn to regulate their emotions. So in response to some kind of discomfort and maladaptive thing, so you need to understand that just to regulate their anxieties and manage their aggression, the reaction you give to that child is very important. If you don't understand at that point that you're giving him some kind of making him pampering him without any reason, or giving him more attention that is not required over there, or maybe you are not making him more dependent on you, so that you love that child, it doesn't mean you're just it means that you're just pampering him for the wrong reason. You're loving him for the I'm not saying that you should not love your child, you should love your child, but you over here the point is that you are giving him attention for, or you're rewarding his behavior which could be problematic for him in the later life. So it means that you have to see what you're doing with your child. If a child is asking for something which is not good for the child, then you need to you have to listen to that cry, because if you not listen to that cry, ultimately you will go to towards some therapist and you will say that my child is not eating anything, my child don't want to do anything because he wants a certain thing, and the whole family is trying to make him comfortable, he's not able to comfortable, and he's not going to some comfort zone because he's showing a lot of temper tantrums. And when the child is going to go to the school and when the child go into the practical life, then these kind of issues can create problems for him or her. Okay, let's see how we can manage temper tantrums. The first thing is, okay, you need to understand what is the motivation or purpose of that child. You need to recognize that emotions, that what is the purpose of that child for that kind of temper tantrum. So recognize the motivation of that behavior. Then to get attention, what is the reason? This could be to get the attention, to get the child what he wants or need, denial or wants or need, delayed access to that thing, whatever wants or needs. So over here you will understand that why the child is showing temper tantrums, what you said no to him, and what was the reason. That was denial to his wants or needs. Second thing would be, once you identify that thing, when you start thinking about that behavior, what was happened before that, when the child throw that tantrum, and after that, during that, then you will get the idea why the child is showing that temper tantrums. Okay, so once you identify that why the child is showing this, why your child is tantruming, then you can respond more appropriately, recognize your child needs in the moment and without giving into them. Instead of, you need to understand that why the child is doing that, so you can work on that behavior. So you have to need to understand why, what is the motive of that child at that moment of showing certain kind of behavior. Reinforce positive behavior. Okay, once you identify, next could be catch your child when he or she is responding appropriately on small problems and praise or reward him for great behavior. For example, you might see that the child usually cry on something, but one day the child was not crying and something happened that. So if you start responding to that thing, you start praising your child, you could give your child your hug, you could hug a child, you can you can praise your child in some other way, so that child understand and what is appropriate behavior. If I reward appropriately, then my mother or my caretaker is going to respond me appropriately. Okay, it could be hug, high five, way to go, are always a very productive way, actively avoiding those temper tantrum and outbursts, and teaching your child that he or she and your would have your attention for the time, and he's successful too. So it means that for getting your attention, he need to behave in certain way. So it means that he would get this idea that if I will do this thing in that moment, if I want something, and if I go to instead of crying, if I even go to my mother and hold her hand, or maybe point toward that thing, if the child is not verbal, he will get this idea that if I will do that activity, then my mother is going to listen to me. So that could be the way that your child will learn, and you need to show him that how he can do, or if the child is not able to do or the child not able to behave appropriately, then you can teach your child but how he can do that. Next, for calling attention to what he wants does right in the moment will also help the child build on those successful positive response for the future. So you can tell him that, like I told you already, then you need to show your child what is appropriate behavior. Instead of telling him no, you cannot have this, let's have this, let's try this. And when the child will get this idea that what could be the right response. So maybe next time, instead of crying, instead of throwing stuff on the floor, maybe he come to you sorry, maybe he come to you and only maybe he hold your hand and take toward you to that thing, if, in the case if he's not verbal, okay, it's not non-verbal, or he could hold your hand, or he could point toward that thing maybe, and maybe he come to you and point toward that thing, could be a step toward managing that temper tantrums. Next, build skill for success. Like I already told you, children who demonstrate temper tantrum frequently struggle with impulse control, problem solving, delaying gratification, negotiation, communication, wishes, and needs. Knowing what appropriate is given the given situation. If you're not going to manage your child temper tantrums on the time, and if you're not able to manage the child wants and need and how to communicate to you when they want and need something, then their child have a lot of issues, which could be he could have issue. He might be have issue with the problem, impulse control, problem solving, delaying gratification, negotiation, skill, communication, wishes and needs, wants, and in social situation as well. Next could be and self-soothing. Look for opportunity to build on these skills with your child and help him to be successful. That is to work on these skill outside and temper tantrum movements. Sorry. So you need to work with your child if the child is showing certain kind of temper tantrum. In the next slides, I would tell you how we can do that. And you need to work on the child when the child is not having this kind of temper tantrums. I mean, for example, when the child is angry, then he's out of listening anything. Then he could not listen to you, and he could not listen to any kind of reason. So when the child is calmed down, then you have to talk about all these things. Then you have to talk about what happened at that time, what we can do about that thing, how we can solve that issue in certain situation. So you need to talk to the child once the child is calm and he is able to communicate to you. And it would be like you're crying, the child is crying, you're shouting, the child is shouting. So it's not going to help you out. It may be worse in that situation. So we can also try these tips. Let's talk about that. And try this tip that could help you out to track their temper tantrums. Agree on frustration signal. You need to understand why the child is frustrated. So it could be needed in any way. Either it's attention need, either it is the child needs something, either the child is hungry. So it could not be all the time attention seeking behavior. It could be the child actually needs something. So you need to, instead of looking toward that thing, the child is attention seeking, you need to understand that why the child is doing it. Maybe the whole day you spend with that guest you have at home, and you did not pay attention to your child. So if you might spend 5 or 10 minutes with your child, then the child will be able to, or even if you talk to your child that we have guests today and we are going to do certain activity when the guests are gone. So you give a kind of, you could say, way out of that thing, and you have that, that the child would start showing temper, then the child will start crying. So you already have a solution for that thing. So you could talk to your child that yesterday we have guests, we are not able to play something, we could do that later on. Assign a calm space. This is what I also do when the child is crying, because when the child is crying, you're saying the child don't understand anything, and the child is not going to understand your reasons as well. In fact, the child will start hating themselves if you hate the child that why he's crying, like that. If you don't love your child for the way he is, so you need to assign a place. You could do that by assigning a place in your room or in your whole house, that if you're angry, then you can go to that place. If you're crying, you can go to that place. So a calm place could be even a sensory play area as well. So if your child is crying, you could go to that place, and you can assign that, you can ask your child to go and cry there. When the child is normal, then he can come to you, or you can take the child to the place where the child feels more happy, so he can feel calm. I'm especially talking about those children who have sensory issue, who are with autism, ADHD, and other problems. Think about what is causing the tantrum, like auditory. You need to think about the reason why the child is doing that and why the child is behaving a certain way. Next is, you need to set clear expectation. So it means that when you're talking to your child, it sometimes why the child is, because a lot of time the parents are trying to trick their child by saying that we will do this, we will do this, we will eat this, we will do that, and stuff like that. So what happens? But that when you don't give a child what you ask that you will give him. For example, if you said to your child that we will eat some ice cream flavor, and you don't do that when the child performs something, or when the guest or gone, you did not play with that child, then that could be a definite reason the child will start showing temper tantrum. So once which you pledge with your child, you have to follow that, because that is the way the child is going to trust you. If you're not doing that, then that is the first step that child start mistrusting you, and the child is going away from you. And if the child would face a bigger problem in the life later on, then the child will not come to you, and the child could get into some serious trouble. These are some small things, we don't think about that, but these could have long repercussions. So we have to think about that and acknowledge your child feelings. If the child is crying, then let him cry. If the child is angry, then let him show anger, but in appropriate way. Like I told you, that there could be a reason, go there and cry there, and maybe the child tell you, maybe the child show you what he want, what he needs, and the child have to talk to you about that problem, and you have to ask him what is the problem. So that anger is a feeling. The child is angry when he did not get that thing, because in any way there was a need involved. Either it is hunger or thirst, or either it's some kind of attention from you, or maybe the child want to go to some place. So there is a need over this. You need to understand why the child is doing that, and if that thing is not appropriate, then you can talk to that child, and you can ignore it as well. In the when sometimes the child is doing this because of reason, like there was a mother in the session, she asked me that the child wants to have some kind of junk food all the time. They have a place in the house The child want to go over there all the time, and the child want that thing, and she will not go away from that place. So, but how much a child could eat? Maybe one packet. If a child want, you could give him back one packet, and you have to tell him clearly that you're not going to get that packet, no matter what you do. No matter, I mean that you have to be careful about danger and safety issue. Otherwise, if a child is crying, if a child is showing things on the floor, let him do at that time. After that, you can teach him to, you could say, teach him to put everything on that own appropriate places. So this is a strategy I'm giving, and praise the behavior you want to see. And if the child is even calm for 5 or 10 minutes, and after that he was doing that, or after that, even if stop crying at that moment, and you have to praise that child, because that's how you're going to teach the child that what does a good behavior mean and what you want from that child. And that is, and you can tell by you are telling him also how to regulate his emotion, and how to tell you something instead of getting impulsive, or instead of getting angry, or instead of getting acting out. Now let's talk about meltdown. Okay, meltdown is a little bit distinctive from temper tantrums. Uh, with temper tantrums, it could be attention seeking, it could be with the reason, or sometime when a child get that thing, that then the temper tantrum might go off, because over there we talk about me. But meltdown could be any time. It could be because of sensory load, and there could be other problems as well, and other reasons as well. So let's go toward meltdown and how we can manage meltdown of a child. So what is a meltdown? It occurs when the child lose control over his or her behavior, and can only be calmed by a parent or other when reaches to the point of exhaustion. So when the child is having any kind of meltdown, so try to stay close to the child. It's one important technique to understand, that nobody could calm child until unless that's the parent. So parents or caregiver or caretaker uh, close to that child. So if a child have any kind of meltdown, if you cannot do anything, because I have seen mothers start crying, so you just stay with your child and sit over there with the child. No matter the child is saying you, she don't want to sit with you, he don't want to see you, and I have seen, and I've seen children, they're doing that kind of thing. Even then you have to stay closer to your child. Okay, so he know that no matter because sometimes meltdowns, because it could be of some kind of sensory load, and the child don't understand that what is happening is around. Maybe he's overwhelmed from something. So you need to stay there with your child. Meltdowns are reactions that are of feeling overwhelmed and are often seen as a result of sensory overstimulation, like I already told you. Tantrum can lead to meltdown, so it can be hard to tell the difference between the two outburst responses appropriately. If you are not attendant and your child, you need to understand your child's sensory signal. For example, I have seen a child having a lot of meltdown, and sometimes it also happens that the child might have felt something in the morning time, and the child have that meltdown for, it could be for days. I have seen children melt down for 2 or 3 days also. So you don't understand that what could be the reason. So I was talking to a mother day before yesterday, and she told me that the child, because I was working with that child, the child was, I tried everything, and the child was not responding to me. The child was not responding in the session. So I even took 3 days to talk to that mother, and I was talking to her daily. And no, what happened? She told me that the child was playing with his father, and his father is out of station. So there's no one in the home, and the child misses his father. That was the reason that there was just misses father. And the second thing was that the child was crying without any sound, and he was crying for 1 or 2 hours, and he did for 3 days, and I tried everything, and he was not communicating with me. He was not telling me anything. The child was normal also. But the thing was that, but that was the reason the child was having that kind of meltdown. So it could be any reason. So meltdowns are full body reaction to be overwhelmed. They are more extreme than tantrums, and kids aren't in control of them. So sometimes the child start throwing themselves on the floor. They will bang their head. You need to stay with your child so that they don't bang their head on the floor. So the thing is that you need to stay with the child. If you don't do anything, it's a way, because sometimes you cannot do anything. Children don't need to. Children don't listen to reason when they are aggressive, when they are stimulated, when they start crying, then they are screaming. Just stay with your child over there, and you can do one thing. If it's in a social situation, then you can move your child from that place. So you need to the important thing is you need to stay with your child. Either the father is the mother is a caretaker or caregiver. Okay, let's talk about how you can manage temper tantrums. Okay. So important thing is sometimes the child have temper tantrums, then they have the anxiety, what is going to come next. And I've seen a lot of children have this kind of meltdowns or temper tantrums. Then you're changing things, because if we talk about autism, we talk about ADHD as well. So they, the more they stick to plan, the less anxiety they have. So what you could do, what could be the small step and strategies, tips? Visual schedule, you need to tell the social stories. Social story could be in the form of pictures as well, and you could create your own story also. Check off list, you need to tell the whole schedule for the day. We are going to do this thing, unless we did this, we did it, we did this, now we are going to do that. If the child is not able to read, then you can tell your child. And activity or task schedule as well. So scheduling is very important. Just tell the time, at 10 o'clock we are going to do that, at 11 o'clock we are going to do that, at 12 o'clock we are going to do that. Routine sensory diet activity, it means that you have to have a place at home. If you talk about children who have sensory issues, who have sensory stimulation disorder, who have SPD, sensory processing disorder, with autism, with ADHD, even with this kind of issue could happen with intellectual disability as well. Even those issues, those problem, those children who have behavioral issues, and even other children as well, who don't have behavior issues, so who have issues with impulse control, anger management, who are ODD and other kind of issues as well. So any child could have these problems, and you just need to understand that how you're going to give your child a sensory diet. And it could be anything. It could be a room. You could massage your child, or you can have that sensory play room, or you can have a room at home where the child should feel calm. So you need to do that, and you need to do sensory integration therapy with the children as well, and seek out quiet and safe space, like I told you about temper tantrum as well. So in a room, you have a place, an area where there is chances of no sound at all, minimum sound. So just go there. You could have colorful lights in the room. The room should need to be dark, or it up to you. It's up to your child, expectation your child needs. So how he can have a good place area where he can calm down. And remember to breathe also. And sometimes it happens that the mother condition or the father or the caretaker condition is worse than the child. So just take a breath. And when you're deep breathing, then your stomach should come out, and you have to inhale the whole oxygen you're inside. Okay. So after that, when you just calm down and you just count to 3 and inhale in out 3 to 4 times, then you need to understand what you're going to do to your child. So just have a place at home and take your child over there. Okay, let's talk about other thing also, what we can do about temper tantrum. Let's see what we can do before meltdowns. Like once the meltdown is passed, what we can do over that. Get to know the knowledge triggers. You need to understand what the child, it could be a smell, it could be a sound, it could be streak sound, machine sound, baby crying sound, a smell, people, certain people, or you could say some places, some places. So it could be some kind of, but even sometimes it could be some kind of food also. So just they are not the same for every child, and sometimes it is possible that the child is not going to have a meltdown from the same thing or temper tantrum from the same thing. So you need to understand that also. So it's different for every child, and your child may not be acting to something obvious. For some kid, it might be emotional or sensory overload. For other, it might be unexpected changes or pain or fear. Knowing your child's trigger can make it easier to avoid meltdown. You may notice that your child gets anxious before school or fall apart at the end of the day, or maybe meltdown happen close to mealtime or bedtime. In that case, hunger or fatigue may be a triggers. Or maybe you notice that there are certain places where they happen. It could be noise or crowded places. So whenever the meltdown happen, you need to understand that what happened before that. So just keep and quiet in a quiet place and start thinking about that where that happened. What was the plate? What could be the trigger? Who came into that place? What was the smell? Did you give something your child? Did you say something? Did somebody say something? Or what was the environment? What was the environment like? What was changing in the environment? So you need to understand about that, and for understanding, you have to think about it. Notice when it is escalating. Okay, if you catch the sign of early enough, you might be able to help your child calm before full-blown meltdown occurs. Common warnings could be trouble thinking clearly, making decisions, or responding to question. Maybe the child stop responding. Maybe the child stop eating. Maybe the child stand up. Maybe the child start wandering in the room. Maybe the child start flapping his hand. Maybe the child flipping, or maybe the child do something, and maybe the child put something in his mouth. So it could be anything. Maybe the child don't even know how to drink water. So it could be anything. You need to understand, and you need to think about that. Repeating thoughts and question over and over again. Maybe the child is insisting on same thing again and again. So you need to understand about that. Refusing to follow direction or cooperate, and the child stop listening to you, or stop listening to you at all, or stop responding to you. Trying to shut out noise, sight, or other sensory things, or trying to run away or hide. So maybe the child do this, maybe the child start doing this, maybe the child do this and running in the place and crying. Maybe the child start giggling, maybe the child start closing his eyes, or it could be, and maybe the child start doing this, maybe the child start doing this. So I'm just saying you because I have worked with these children, and I have seen these things, so that's why I'm telling you. Maybe the child, you have to shut down the noise, but it could be anything. Maybe the child stop, turn off the light, turn off the music, turn off the TV. It could be anything. Moving restlessly in fidget, like I will told you, and pacing and complaining of physical issues like dizziness, heart pounding. It could be anything, and if the child is able to tell you, it could be any kind of panic-like situation. He is able to communicate. What could be the next thing? Try to distract from that trigger. If you have seen that, then you can try to distract. For some kid, the escalation plan can be interrupted, and it might help to distract your child with a different task or activity. So if the moment you see, you get this idea, maybe the child is in a different place, so you might give him some alternative activity, maybe some favorite activity. You could have a favorite toy in your bag, and you can give that to your child, or you can have something favorite, you give it to that child, some favorite toy. Always give a child a sensory toy is very important over there. So whenever you go outside, you should have a 2 or 3 sensory toy with a child like in your bag, so that the moment you get this idea that the child is going to create some kind of trouble, or this is some kind of trouble situation, the child could be freak out and these places. So just give that thing to that child, so that you avoid that kind of meltdown in that case. Be patient also. Sometimes few things don't work. So you instead maybe try to stop by explaining quickly, but talking fast and loud often make it worse. Give your child more space and more time to process what you are saying. Use short, concrete sentences, and take away your child need to make decisions. Okay, so it means that when your child is so hyper or so into his thing, the child is not able to listen to you. So just be patient. Just stay over there. If you're not saying anything, just stay quietly and sit over with your child. You can just take your child to some place and try to talk to your child about that, and just try to be there with your child. If he's not able to listen to you, when the child is a little bit okay, then try to talk to your child. Okay. During meltdown, do a safety assessment. When your child is screaming and throwing things, it may feel like an emergency, but it doesn't mean that the question to consider it is when anyone going to hurt or not. So you need to understand that also. If you're sitting with your child, if you say that I'm just sitting with your child, maybe the child start doing something that could hurt him, so you need to understand that as well. Be reassuring. It takes trial and error to know where your child wants physical distance or a firm hug or touch, but keeping your voice or body language calm, it will help your child. And make sure your child knows that you are there, and understand that the child, whenever he feels scary or out of control, then you are there for your child. Give some space to your child. Like I told you, if you're out in public, try to help out your child, move out that to a quiet place. If you're at home, that see if you can get your child to a spot which is calm. If it's not possible, move your child and ask people to go give you both some space, and that's how you can go to manage that meltdown. And tone it down by light. Keep things quiet, turn off the light. You could have a dim light at your home, and you could turn off that light. And in your home, if you're not willing to move that child, then you can request other people to just leave that room and go to the other room. So standing in the doorway can make it feel blocked in also. So just let that child in that room, and you can go to outside, or you can just give it the space to the child and go to outside, and just you could say just make sure that the danger safety is in your mind. Consider your postpartum meltdown, and you need to understand everything that what you're going to do. So think about that and work on that plan. Start thinking about how to rearrange your child when the meltdown is over, rather than do something that start up again. You may need to abandon your shopping trip. If the meltdown was triggered by an emotional conversation, you may need to back away from that topic. You can find a new way to approach, and you can even use a new door, a new place. And if you're going to certain place which the child don't like, then the child could sit in the car with somebody, with the father. You can have that shopping, which is important, and you can go and come back to that place. So it is very important. You need to consider all aspects. Okay. And what you could do after the meltdown? Let's talk about that. Take time to recover. Give time to serve some space to the child. Let him speak, and you could talk about that maybe after one day. Keep calm. Your child might feel embarrassed or guilty. You will probably see physical exhaustion as well. So give him some time to recover, and after some time you can talk about that. Find the right time to talk. You can help your child make sense of what happened. Right after a meltdown may not be the best time. True, when you both are calm, here are some ways to approach that. And because you have to talk to your child about that, what happened? So, what you could do about that? Give your child a heads up. Give guidance, notice that you're going to talk, and be reassuring that your child is not in trouble. So, when everything is okay, so instead of being aggressive on your child, saying that you did very bad, I'm very embarrassed on you, because that situation was not in the child control. Because we talk about sensory overload, we talk about the trigger could be not in the child control, because the triggers are coming from the environment is not in our control, environment is not in nobody in control, and a child has certain kind of condition. So what you could do about that is, you need to tell your child that you love him in any way. And when you're talking to your child, you need to talk like in the way that um, but don't say that you are embarrassed on that situation. You just say that yeah, that situation happened, and you did something. What we can do about that? If a child is verbal, if a child is not verbal, then even then you have to talk to your child. Don't assume that your child will understand it. The child understand everything. Just go to the child and said that this happened, you behave in a certain way, and that was the reason, and next time we will try to avoid that thing. And if you dislike something, then you can tell me, you can talk about that. So you're giving a space to a child that if he don't feel anything, if you don't like anything, at least he would come to you if he cannot talk to you or if he's not verbal. So we have to establish the important or a way of communication with our children, so that they can understand that if they have some kind of trouble, they could come to us in any way, if either they talk or not. So we have to give heads up our child, and you need to tell your child that he manage his when the child manages his temper tantrum in some way, then you have to tell him that he's not in trouble. That was not because the child might feel guilty that what going to happen with me, because maybe sometime this happened in a social situation, that was happening in some kind of marriage ceremony, some reception. Anyway, we have to think about that. Be brief. Talking about a meltdown can make kids feel bad or defensive. Say what you need to say, but try to avoid saying the same thing over and over again. So instead of, sometimes we say a lot of hurtful things, because when the child is emotional, we are also emotional. And we might be angry as well. I mean, we might have, kind of a depressive episode, or guilty as well, that we are not able to communicate our child. The child is in the problem because of us. Because as a parent, I have seen a lot of guilt in the parent. So um, if you want to talk to your child, maybe you can write that script. So and try to be more supportive, as much supportive as you can. Brief, to the point, and it could be maybe the child said it was not our fault. They could make them feel bad or defensive also. So say whatever you want to say, but you have to communicate your child in any way what happened over there and what we can do about that. So it is important to over here communication is very important. Make sure that your child understand what you are trying to say, because like I told you, it should be uh, to the point and in the clear word as well. Don't give him mixed message, mixed signals, like yes or no, do this, we will do this, we will try this. Don't avoid this thing, like you are giving two different things. So talk about the child to the point, and you should also understand what you're trying to say to the child. That ask your child to tell what they talk about, what they feel and how they feel, and answer the question the child asks me. If you decided on action plan, see if your child can repeat it for you or not. So what could be the action plan? You should also understand that what you're going to do next time to avoid that kind of certain situation. So that is all for today, and I'm sure the effort I try to put in talking about temper tantrums and mental might help you, all those who are listening to that thing. Over here, you need to understand that sometimes parents come to me and they say that we cannot do, and maybe this there was a mother and she told me that she started crying because the child started hit her. He was not doing anything, and I told her that there's a certain boy, when he's angry, he hit me. and I just don't say anything to him, because that is not his fault. He don't, maybe he have listen, or you could say he had learned that from something, that if you're angry, just hit. If your aggression, just hit. So that might be a learned behavior from some places. So instead of getting on, getting into that we cannot do something, what we can do about that child, we can start working on the communication of the child, so that communicate effectively. If the child cannot say any word, then at least the child could give us a gesture that they don't like, the sign of no, they don't like, they want you to go to some place, they're pushing that. If the child is not able to say you anything, then at least if the you tell him that if he start pushing you to some other place, or he want you to go to some other place, it could be the indicator as well. So you know your children very well, and what you could do about that also. So it's all about and the problem over here sometimes, something which called these temper tantrum and mental might don't cause the same thing for other people. So like situation are unexpected, so you need to understand this also, that whatever you're doing for your child is you're doing very well. And if you have any question, you can ask this question in the comment section. I will happy to respond, and these are my WhatsApp numbers, my email also. And thank you so much for listening me. See you in the next video. Bye bye. Allah Hafiz.